Hi, so this is Samantha, and I'm here with my friend Jared. We met at the dog park, and I noticed he had this really awesome bone conduction hearing aid, right?
Mhm.
And he was kind enough to answer some questions for me and just kind of made friends through the dogs mostly. Jared has a, is it, what's Lupita, like her technical title?
A hearing service dog.
Hearing service dog. Um, so I guess I'm going to start off by saying, like, I don't want to tokenize you or,
Go ahead.
yeah.
Put me in a box.
I don't want to give you, like, if there's any question that you feel is rude or,
Mhm.
I want to be educated. I want
Right.
to know, like, if I'm
Mhm.
saying or doing something wrong, like, I would rather be corrected than insult someone who I want to be friends with.
Right.
So I guess I'm going to start off by asking, were you born with hearing loss or was it acquired? We've already talked about this, but for the sake of the interview.
I was born with hearing loss. I have a chromosome disorder called branchial otorenal syndrome, or BOR for short, because that's pronounceable. And it resulted in me having a severe loss in my right ear and a profound loss in my left ear. And since I was born, I've lost about 20% of what I originally had.
Okay. And you hear better out of your right ear, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I remember that from the dog park. So what can you tell me about your bone conduction aid? Because that's really cool to me. That's different.
Like just how it works, or why?
Yeah, how does it work?
How it works is, so I actually have a little titanium plate embedded on my skull right here.
Oh, cool.
And then, so what you do is you get a surgery, and then they put that titanium plate right on the skull, about half a centimeter in or so, and then they close it back up, sew everything up. After 3 weeks, the bone is fused with the titanium enough that it'll vibrate without pulling off.
Okay.
And then they'll get you fitted with a bone anchored hearing aid. And how the bone anchored hearing aid works is it takes an audio through the microphones, just like a normal hearing aid, does all the processing and stuff. And rather than sending that audio amplified as a speaker, it lets you take that audio, transform it into the normal sound waves for vibration, and then put that into a vibrating processor that sits on top of the bone anchor, the titanium plate. And then that vibration will cause the bone in your skull to vibrate at the same frequency, which will use bone, and then so that's generally bone conduction, and so that will cause the vibration to be sent straight into the cochlea, bypassing the middle and the outer ear.
Okay. So why bone conduction versus a quote unquote regular hearing aid?
So bone conduction, what it's used for is it's used for anything that needs to bypass the middle ear but still has a functional inner ear.
Okay.
So if you don't have a functional inner ear or middle ear or anything like that, then you go with a cochlear implant that bypasses all 3 levels. It's just sending electrical impulses straight to the brain. A bone anchored hearing aid is when you can't use your middle ear or your outer ear maybe, but you still have a functioning-ish inner ear.
Okay.
So as long as you have 50 decibels of loss or less in your inner ear, you're fine.
Okay.
And for me, I had an ear infection, a perpetual ear infection ever since I was 8, and it was never going to go away. And I had scar tissue in my ear, and that scar tissue was going to completely collapse and fill over and just keep growing forever. And the skin and cells in my ear have metastasized to turn into the same type of skin cells that you have in your mouth.
Okay.
So the whole thing was just kind of a mess. And the only way to like permanently get around that issue was to just not have anything in my ear. But I still need to hear, so I went with this option.
Awesome. That's really cool.
But most of the people that have bone anchored hearing aids are going to have them because they don't have like an outer ear or something to actually attach on.
The pinea, that outer ear part. Okay. So it's a genetic disorder. Do you have other people in your family?
Yeah, so I have it, my mom has it, and her twin sister has it, and my grandma has it. And any of my kids will have a flat 50% chance to have it or not.
Okay. And so what would be your preferred term? Would you say you're hard of hearing or deaf, or like what's your preference?
It tends to vary a bit with context, but I tend to kind of prefer more towards the deaf side of things.
Okay.
And the distinction between that is generally it's the same for both for like deaf cultures and for autistic cultures.
Okay.
So if you see yourself as part of that identity, rather than using person first language, you want to use identity first language.
Mm-hmm.
And then so if you're deaf, you're saying this is part of my identity.
You would say I'm deaf.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why like some people might choose to say person of color, but then if they're black or something, they might say I'm black, I'm African American, I'm part of this is my identity.
Okay.
So generally, if I'm talking to other people, or if I'm referring abstractly to the culture, I'll be like people with hearing disability or something like. I'll use people first language generally.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to prefer the more identity first language side of things, and I always denote that with a capital D, which is the common way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And lowercase d is the disability itself, and capital D for deaf is referring to the culture.
Okay. Yeah. So can we introduce Lupita?
Yeah.
Lupita, come here. Come here. Let's see if we can get Lupita in the picture.
Oh,
So
just pick
I'm gonna tilt it down. This is Lupita, and she is the deaf assistant dog. So what does Lupita do? Tell us about her.
She is from Canine Companions for Independence, and they trained her and they raised her.
Mm-hmm.
And so what hearing service dogs do is they'll alert me to sounds that I can't hear.
Okay.
So the canonical example would be an alarm clock. I have an alarm clock that goes off. I can't hear it because my ears don't work. She'll hear it, she'll wake up, she'll poke me until I wake up, and then that'll work. Or if someone knocks at the front door, and then she'll come get me, she'll poke me until until she has my attention. I'll say, what? And then she'll go to the door and she'll sit down by the door.
A nice alert.
Mm-hmm. Most of what happens is I sleep really, really heavy, and it's terrible because I'm deaf too. So I sleep really, really heavy, and then so Lupita will wake me up and I'll be like, good job, come in bed and snuggle with me, and I'll be like,
Back to sleep.
So that one's not super effective, but the rest of them work fine.
Yeah. We had another two, we were talking earlier about in the event of a fire alarm.
Mm-hmm.
So if you didn't hear that, she would alert you to that.
Any repeatable noise is something that can be trained with a hearing service dog. So like someone calling my name, really, really hard to train because everyone says it differently.
Mm-hmm.
And dogs don't generalize well. But repeatable noise like oven timers, kitchen timers, fire alarms, doorbells, even like someone texting your phone, like a phone notification thing, all those are things that work really, really well with the hearing service dogs.
Cool. Yeah, she's a good dog. Does a good job. So what would you say is, like, if there are any advantages to being deaf, what would you say there are, or?
Probably about 3 times a year when there's like a really, really loud ambulance going down the street right next to you, and it's like rush hour and you have to keep the lights on the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just take your hearing aids off and like not really worry about it, and everyone else is going.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Other than that, there's not really a whole lot of advantages, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's just something that becomes a part of you, and you deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're better off because of it. Maybe not. That's kind of a personal thing, like how you identify with it and then embrace it. But yeah, there's not a whole lot of more or less advantages because of it.
Yeah. What would you say about disadvantages?
Disadvantages are mostly with other people's interactions. So most people don't really understand it very well because it's something that's very varied, and it's an invisible disability. So I don't look any different or any normal. I have something sticking out the side of my head, but
it's really cool.
Yeah, it's cool, and most people wouldn't even notice it. And I've had more than one person tell me that they thought it was a Bluetooth thing for my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like I'm completely normal. I look normal, and then they get really pissed off because I can't follow a conversation.
Oh.
Or it's just like this person must be incompetent because they say what all the time. Or is there something wrong with their intelligence because they just can't really follow these group conversations well or something? Just like they're really slow, have to re-explain everything over and over kind of thing. And it's hard to take like those invisible disabilities and not attribute them to the most obvious invisible thing, the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably the main disadvantage of it. I've definitely not had some jobs I would have otherwise had because of my hearing loss. Because people didn't want to put up with the having to train me or work around me.
Oh.
And you can't discriminate against it. They can just say, "Oh, we had more applicants than we needed, so you're on the bottom of the list." And meh.
Yeah.
It's really hard to prove those things.
I'll bet. So is there anything that you would want hearing people to know, or like, what if you could say anything? Would you have a whole class of people who now can like hear your voice and, and whatever you want to tell us?
If I could probably change one thing in the world immediately, it would be just that it annoys me that we have so much power in technology and so much potential for it, and we don't use it anywhere near its potential.
Mm-hmm.
So we have in movie theaters the screens resize arbitrarily, and nobody has thought that it's acceptable to just resize the screen about 1 foot down lower and then just put captions below the screen.
Yeah.
It would solve everyone's problem because the people that complain about the captions distracting them, it's not on the real screen. And the people that complain about just like, there's no downside. But nobody does that. And there's also, we've invented like neural networks and artificial intelligence. We've invented basically every single way to do voice recognition. And we've also had laws out there that say that anything captioned needs to be captioned reliably and accurately. And still nobody can figure out how to make even remotely accurate captions for live TV, which is even more frustrating since that like court reporters use a stenograph keyboard. And in order to be licensed as a court reporter, you have to be able to type at 180 to 220 words a minute for an hour, which is far faster than normal human rated speech. So there's literally no reason that we can't use our technology to have completely accurate 100% real-time captions, as is already required for law. But nobody cares.
I've definitely noticed that, where you're like, is this whoever's captioning this, or if it's an artificial intelligence doing it?
They don't use artificial intelligence. They use robots actually. Okay. But the robots are just their technology that's been around since about 2004, 2005.
Yeah.
Actually, no, not even that. It was 1995.
Okay.
1995 is when artificial intelligence figured out how to solve handwriting recognition. And then about a couple years after that, the voice recognition part came out. It was terrible, absolutely terrible.
And it's still bad. Yeah. I know what you mean, because I definitely have noticed of like, whoever's doing this is drunk. Like, what's going on? This is terrible.
But ever since that, every single like live news station has just completely given up on captioning. They're like, we can do the bare minimum. It's not even legal. It's just enough that people can say we tried. Which that actually honestly almost pisses me off more than just not doing it. Yeah. Because if you're not doing it, you can be like, I didn't know. I mean, sure, it's legally required, and it's my job to know that, but whatever.
Yeah.
But if there's captioning that's just like so incredibly incompetent that is like some CEO had to sit there and say, I like that. That's good enough. And it's just like, it's dumb.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to have a little interview, and I'm sure I will think of even more questions even afterwards, but I really appreciate you taking the time to talk and to come over and share a meal, and I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right.
Do you want me to just give you a question for free?
Yeah, if you want.
The question will probably be like, how does my hearing loss work?
Okay. Yeah, how does your hearing loss work?
And just the difference between bone loss and nerve loss.
Sure.
And how that plays into hearing aids and hearing technology. And for me, the answer is I have both bone loss and nerve loss.
Okay.
So bone loss would be when the bones in the middle ear are not formed correctly.
Okay.
And they're misformed. Maybe they're just completely broken, or they're not there. That would be bone loss. Bone loss can more or less be fixed purely by just turning the volume up. That's all you really need to do, because what happens is sound goes into the middle ear, and then the little hammer hits the drum, and then that sound goes into the inner ear. So if you don't have the hammer or the drum and that's not working right, just turn up the volume and you're basically fine. nerve loss is in the cochlea, and that's when all those hairs are either damaged or not missing, or they just misfire wrong somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And then with that, that's difficult because each of the nerve corresponds to its very specific frequency range. And then, so if that nerve is gone, you just don't hear those. And she reminded me of something. I actually
Onion rings?
It did look like onion rings, but it was about this.
You made me lose my train of thought. I love you.
I'm so sorry.
But yeah, so the nerve loss is really, really hard to actually correct because it requires being able to take sound and purposely distort it so that the sound falls into the frequency ranges that you can hear.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to do that without confusing the brain, because now you're purposely sending the wrong thing into the brain. The brain has to undo that.
Mm-hmm.
So that last step, the brain interpreting the sound, is even more hidden than nerve loss. And so I know someone that has completely perfect hearing and worse hearing than I do, because their brain just does not take sound and interpret it correctly. It doesn't.
Yeah.
So they actually, every time they go to a hearing doctor or something like that, they're like, "Trust me, I don't need hearing aids. They don't work. I have perfect hearing. You can see the little X's on the perfect hearing. I just can't hear."
Huh.
And so I actually have an extraordinary ability to interpret sound, which is why I can compensate for having hearing so low that I shouldn't even be able to talk right.
Uh-huh.
At all, actually.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You have that power.
Mm-hmm.
You have the power.
And then I'm also a walking medical miracle, which is what Chloe reminded me of. And so the cochlea has a very, very small amount of liquid inside of it.
Uh-huh.
And so if it cracks at all, for any reason, you basically are guaranteed to have all the water drain out, and then your nerves will instantly die, and you'll become 100% completely deaf forever.
Yeah.
Mine was cracked in my right ear, the one I hear better in. And I was in the doctor for some unrelated thing. It was like another ear surgery or something, but an unrelated one. And then for no reason, the doctor's like, "I just want to do a CAT scan on this guy's ear. I don't know why. I just feel like I need to do a CAT scan." And so they do a CAT scan on my ear, and they notice that my cochlea is cracked, and they're like, "Can the guy still hear?" "I can still hear." They're like, "That's not possible. Let's make sure that it continues staying possible." And then so they went in immediately, like the very next hour, into surgery, opened up my head again, repaired it.
All good.
And I can still hear. Nobody knows why.
Well, I'm glad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
No problem.
I appreciate it. And yeah, hopefully we and our puppies will be friends for years to come. Yeah?
Sounds like fun.
All right. Thank you.